Atiq Ahmed was a law unto himself those days. Atiq Ahmed was always politically well connected in any case. Bahubali also helped them with money. Bahubali helped them in the field in rigging elections.
Author, a political and public affairs analyst, journalist, and who was the media advisor to former Chief Minister of Goa Manohar Parrikar, Rajesh Singh. Welcome to Brood Talk.
Thank you.
I want to start, of course, by asking you first. The biggest thing right now is you, of course, are the author of the book of Bahubalis of Indian Politics, from bullet to ballot. I'm going to start by asking you. You've written about 11 Bahubalis, including Atiq Ahmed, and in your chapter on Atiq Ahmed, you've said. If Allahabad is revered for the confluence of three sacred rivers, it was also known for the confluence of Atiq Ahmed's politics and crime. Everyone in Prayagraj has heard of Atiq Ahmed. The younger lot may have escaped the full experience of those dreaded times, but the elders still recall, with a chill going down their spine, the atmosphere that revealed when the dawn straddled the city and terrorized the public. You've spoken to people and gotten accounts from them from Prayagraj during Atiq Ahmed's reign time. Can you tell us about those times? What was Allahabad like, and more specifically Atiq Ahmed?
Atiq Ahmed was a law unto himself those days. You see, because of his political connections, he was close to the Samajwadi Party for a long while, and the Samajwadi Party was the ruling party. And even when it was not, Atiq Ahmed was always politically well connected in any case. Now, his way of dealing was, see, he was a Bahubali. He started off on a very small scale, small time pilferer of coal, which he used to pick up from the railway tracks. Those days you had coal trains running. And then he would sell it in the grey market. And then he got into the business of railway scrap and all of that. And he made some money. He got people around him. And he came from a very poor family. So when he started getting all that money, he expanded. He got into construction. And then because of this foot soldiers around him, he started also arm twisting people, getting government contracts, a lot of government contracts in Uttar Pradesh, whether it was irrigation department, the PWD or whatever. Now getting government, in those days there were no e-tenders.
Right.
So getting government contracts was all physical. And he actually literally used physical means to get those government contracts. He tied up with people. He made sure that his people got the contract. And so therefore he continued to flourish.
So from pilfering coal, small time, then getting into the scrap business, and then from there looking at tenders, getting government tenders. When you say there were, and for our young audience, when you say there's no e-tenders, what was it like to be able to physically get a tender? What did you need in order to get these government tenders?
The first thing is you needed to fill a tender form, right? And then you had to make sure that your tender was the lowest for it to be accepted. You had no way of knowing technically who's going to be the lowest tenderer, but you had to fill in the form in the first place. Now, Atiq made sure that the only guys who filled the form were his people. One, two, even the others who filled the form quoted high. His people quoted low. He would get to know who was going to quote how much because of his networking with the officials of the government department. And also he made sure through intimidatory tactics that the guys who could get the contract or who wanted to get the contract backed out. So there were many ways. Money was one. You tempted them with money. You tempted them कि चलो अगला contract मिल जाएगा. And if they did not listen to all that, then of course you could always beat them up, terrify them, all of that. So that is how he started his business. And he became famous and big from there on.
So this was on the business side of it. What was Allahabad like for a common man or a common person then, operating a business, being maybe a real estate person, operating any kind of
you could not do anything as far as business is concerned. You could not do anything without Atiq Ahmed approving it. For example, let's say you are in the business of developing real estate. Okay. Now in those days, I don't remember. I don't think there were high-rise buildings in Prayagraj. Today, of course, there are quite a few. But even plots, vacant plots, if you wanted to do deal in vacant plots, you had to take Atiq's permission to
For
sell
anywhere.
to sell, to buy, whatever. Give him a cut. If you did not do that, his people would make sure that the deal doesn't go through. There will be hassles, there will be problems. People will come and squat on the plot. They would not vacate the plot. All sorts of things would happen to make your business and your transaction difficult to go through. So you had to pay him.
And during that time, I mean, the question is, what was the administration or the police or the government thinking of or doing or not doing?
They did nothing. At least from the 90s onwards, they did nothing because the government belonged, or the party which was in power belonged to the party in which Atiq Ahmed was in power. That is one thing. The second is Atiq Ahmed was also seen as a vote catcher from a particular religious affiliation. So he was also not touched. And possibly also because of the benefits that he was passing on to the party at some level or the other. So nobody bothered to, sort of interrupt his activities. And so they let him continue. In fact, I have, if I remember right, I don't know if it is there in the book, but when he forcibly got a deal done, a land deal done, by making the man sign on the sale deed, selling a land which he did not want to sell to Atiq, he said that he would complain to the authorities, to the police, to wherever. So Atiq was in a generous mood that time, so therefore he did not beat him up. He just smiled and said, why don't you just go to the chief minister directly and see what happens. So that was his audacity. That is the brazenness in which he used to function those days.
Tell us a little bit, you've, without naming the people, you have quoted them in the book on, of various age groups, on what it was like during Atiq Ahmed's time, so to speak. Anything that comes to mind in terms of an anecdote that somebody told you?
There was a police officer, of course he cannot be named, he is retired now and is living out of Prayagraj, he is not there, but he was posted there. And he once told me that our hands were so tightly tied that we knew what this guy was doing, we knew the terror and the havoc he was causing, and we used to get repeated complaints, a string of complaints almost every day about his activities across, and not just Prayagraj, but in neighboring regions such as Kaushambi, Chitrakoot, all of these places. But he said we just couldn't do anything. And even the few occasions when we tried to intervene, the message came to us from the very top that we should not be too enthusiastic about it. So let things happen as they are happening. So he said that we were, if the common man was helpless, that could be understood because the common man had no power. But we, with all the power of our uniform, we were even more helpless than the common man. So that was his terror.
So even the police were, the hands were tied. Tell us a little bit about, you've used the word darbar in the book. You've said Atiq Ahmed's darbar, he used to hold one. What kind of business did he conduct there? Why was it called a darbar? Give us a little bit of sense of what it looked like and what happened.
The darbar was largely not for conducting any business. The darbar was basically to meet common people whom with whom he interacted on a regular basis, people from the neighborhood, people from Allahabad, because you see he also fancied himself as a Robin Hood kind of character. So the darbar basically was to listen to the grievances of the people, try to resolve them in his own way, and therefore make himself popular among the masses. Because you see, these are all gangsters, and this is not just about Atiq Ahmed, but even others. They used to have these kind of interactions with people because that is where they got their strength from. The strength to become a Bahubali came from the people who voted them to power. No? So you had to be that, and for that you had to interact with people, interact with the common man. once in a while get the problems resolved, so that he was seen as a people's leader. So that was the kind of darbar he used to have.
Almost sounds like a movie, on what we've seen. Would you know, like, how many people largely would be in this darbar? What kind of issues that he would take up from time to time?
The number of people would vary. It could be a few hundred. It could be a little more than that sometimes.
Few hundred or more.
Yeah, a few hundred or more, depending upon where he was having his darbar. Sometimes near his house, sometimes elsewhere, some office somewhere. And the kind of issues are, as I said, somebody has a problem with a neighbor, or somebody has a problem with somebody trying to having a problem with even the government. For example, somebody can say I have applied for permission for something, or an NOC for extension of my house, or for the construction of an addition floor. I have not got the NOC. It's 6 months now, or the guy is asking for money, something like that. So he would intervene, and he would just pick the phone, call that guy, and say, "Uska kaam kar do." You know, that kind of stuff which we see in Hindi films.
Right. Exactly like that.
Exactly like that. उसका काम हो जाना चाहिए, उसका काम कर दीजिए.
How did somebody born into a poor family, pilfering of coal, get into scrap, like you've explained, really become a politician, a 5-time, MLA, 1-time MP? Tell us how did something like this actually come to being?
Atiq Ahmed in the 90s was already working closely with the Samajwadi Party at that point in time. See, we have to understand that the 1990s onward was a period when the regional parties were really flourishing. See, the Congress, and we're talking of UP, let's talk of UP specifically. The Congress had already declined in UP during that time. The VP Singh government had fallen. By 1991, it had already gone. And Mulayam Singh Yadav's party, Mayawati's party, was already well entrenched. The BJP then, for a while, was still relevant, though it would become irrelevant after 1995-96, only to become relevant in 2017.
Right.
But that time, yes. But these two regional parties were the big parties. Now, Atiq Ahmed realized that he has to latch on to one of these two. And during that time, it was... and so he decided that he should get in touch with either of that. I think he got in touch with Mulayam Singh Yadav's party, also because Mulayam Singh Yadav's men, as I told you earlier, found merit in exploiting his religious affiliations for votes. So that is how he got into it. But initially, he became a worker, a fundraiser, and at times a settler of disputes within the larger party organization. People wanting something or the other, wanting a bigger pie in the structure, and he would be there to sort of explain to them nicely ki you should not pursue this, or that sort of stuff. So basically the dirty work he was doing quite a bit. And then and then he got this ticket from the Samajwadi Party. But I want to add here that this happened with most other Bahubalis, who realized that all these years we have been working to make sure that these politicians win elections, and we use our expertise in that. So why don't we use this expertise to get ourselves elected? So that also was a turning point in the criminal politician nexus, in the crime politician nexus. And that's how it happened even with this man, Atiq Ahmed.
Both these points, you've said in your book, in the North, and you're referring to North India here, in the North, however, caste became an important factor, used both by the Bahubalis and the parties that backed them. For example, Raghuraj Pratap Singh in UP and Pappu Yadav, Anant Kumar Singh and Anand Mohan Singh in Bihar came to represent their respective castes. The first candidate was co-opted by the BJP and SP to win over upper caste, especially Rajput votes. The second by Lalu Prasad Yadav's RJD to consolidate its Yadav vote. And the third and fourth by various parties to woo the Bhumihar and Rajput electorate. Why is crime and caste so intertwined in the North? Was it always like this? Or was it during the era of this nexus that we saw from the 70s, 80s, and 90s when it came to a boil between the Musselmen and the parties?
Caste was always there, right? And caste conflicts were also always there. Now, what happened is the Mandal Commission recommendations, when they were implemented, that created a huge churning in society, especially in North India. And we're talking of UP and Bihar in the current context. And when the Mandal Commission recommendations were implemented, the other backward castes suddenly found themselves empowered. And when that happened, obviously a clash between the upper castes and the backward classes grew and became more intense. Now, when that happened, the Bahubalis were already around. I mean, people like Pappu Yadav or
Right.
all of these. The politicians were already there who had been thrown as who had become prominent as a result of the caste politics. Lalu Yadav, Nitish Kumar, Mulayam Singh Yadav, Sharad Yadav, Ram Vilas Paswan. Not so much Ram Vilas Paswan but others. All of these. That's all. But the Bahubalis also belong to some caste or the other. Now, when the Mandal Commission recommendations came, depending upon their caste affiliations, Bahubalis began to consolidate their positions. Anand Kumar Singh rallied around the upper castes in Bihar, stitched together an alliance of Thagurs and the Bhumihars. Pappu Yadav became the leader of the Yadav community. So that is how. And Raghuraj Pratap Singh, Raja Bhaiyas in Uttar Pradesh also was an upper caste guy. So all of these people started flaunting their caste identities, basically to present themselves as the messiah of their respective castes, and to also enhance their own reputation as Bahubalis. Because what use is a Bahubali if he cannot even protect his own caste man? So that is how the caste conflict, especially in post-Mandal era, started. And that's the connection between caste and Bahubalis.
And now coming to politicians and Bahubalis, did this have why did it become such a symbiotic relationship from the Bahubalis? Was it more about since they were a law unto themselves, it was more about sort of gaining more power at the end of the day, and for the politicians, because they needed the Musselmen in terms of ballot boxes, things like that. What was that symbiotic relationship between them?
The symbiotic relationship was very simple. If the politicians had certain limitations, they could not dirty their hands doing things that needed to be done to get them votes, to sustain their power. So to get because they could not get their hands dirty, they got people around. They got the Bahubalis to do all the dirty work. So the Bahubalis cajoled people, terrorized them, intimidated them to help them, and to help these politicians get the support. Bahubalis also brought in money, because you see, muscle power also automatically brings in money. So Bahubalis also helped them with money. Bahubalis helped them in the field, in rigging elections. Bahubalis also made sure that the rivals of that particular political leader was taken care of, not too active, not too enthusiastic. All of that used to be taken care of by the Bahubalis, and that's where the Bahubalis became important to the politician.
Talking about becoming important to the politician, one of the biggest things was that you've spoken about is during the UPA a bit on the Manmohan Singh government and the nuclear deal, when the left parties had withdrew their outside support. So your book says he has this distinction on Atiq Ahmed. He has a distinction of being one of the Musselmen who saved the Manmohan Singh government from imminent collapse after the left parties withdrew their outside support to the regime in mid-2008 over the government's decision to proceed with a civil nuclear deal with the US. What did the Bahubali Netas do? How was this stitched together? And this came to light much after?
Yeah, here I would just like to add a correction. Atiq Ahmed, it is true that a lot of people, MPs who were behind bars during that time when the trust vote was to be taken in 2009, they were all furloughed and brought to Parliament to cast their vote, because Manmohan Singh's government was on tenterhooks that time. and they needed every vote they could to save the government. But the correction here I would make is that Atiq Ahmed actually did not vote for the government.
Okay.
Although I've written that there.
Right.
I learned later, because that is not something that you know immediately unless the records are. I learned later that he voted against the government. Whatever the reason may have, he had fallen out by then with the SP in any case, and the SP was supporting the government. But the larger picture is that these guys were brought. See, on the one side you have politicians saying that they oppose the Bahubali culture, they oppose criminals in politics, and on the other side, you actually call these Bahubalis, you get them a free passage from jail to parliament just to get their vote to shore up your numbers. So that duality was evident in this, and it's possible that some of them must have voted. I mean, why would the government take the trouble of getting all these guys to parliament to vote if they were not sure that a majority of them would vote for them?
Right. So I wanted to quickly ask you about the Raju Pal murder case. Tell us a little bit about how this became a turning point. In your book, you say you've called the scene straight out of a Tarantino movie.
Yeah. Yes. The Raju Pal case, you see, what happened was when Atiq Ahmed's ambitions were always growing by the day. And when it was decided by the Samajwadi Party that he should now move to a higher level, which means he should now enter parliament. He was an MLA, multi times MLA. So it was decided that he should go to parliament. And so he contested that election. And he used to represent Allahabad West, the constituency. Now when he contested the election, the Allahabad West constituency fell vacant. And because he was vacating the constituency, the party said, you name the person. So this man names, Atiq Ahmed names his brother, Ashraf, to the seat. So Ashraf gets the ticket and there is a contest. The contest is between Ashraf and Bahujan Samaj Party's Raju Pal. Right. The Raju Pal had earlier contested against the same assembly elections against Atiq Ahmed and lost. So Raju Pal was fielded against by the BSP and he won. Now, for a politician, winning and losing is part of the game, you move on.
Right.
But Atiq Ahmed was not just a politician, he was a gangster. And if a gangster starts forgiving and forgetting, then his business is over. I mean, it's terror, no? that runs his business. So, then a few months after that, and a few days after Raju Pal was married, maybe 9 or 10 days, I think, I don't recollect the exact number of days, he was going in a car in Allahabad along with his friends. So this whole gang, Atiq Ahmed's gang, and possibly he was also there, they opened fire on him, riddled him with bullets, and when the vehicle tried to take him away, just to make sure that he doesn't reach the hospital alive, they pumped further bullets into him. And this was all happening so the vehicles were running all over, the target was running all over, people were scattered all over, shouting, shrieking, and it was all happening in the open.
On the road, traffic.
In the midst of the traffic, people moving around, and these guys were shooting left, right, and center. So it was just, out of the blue, a surreal kind of scene. So he was shot dead, and by the time he was brought to hospital, he was dead. Now, so why I say that is a turning point, and in fact now, after all that has happened, that indeed was a turning point, because until now, Atiq Ahmed was a free man. He could terrorize people, business deals, this, that, whatever he was doing. But this really was a problem. It all began with Raju Pal, came to Umesh Pal, abduction, then went to Umesh Pal's killing by Atiq Ahmed, Atiq Ahmed's brother Asad, and all this, and finally to Atiq Ahmed's elimination in recent years.
And became a real turning point where even the political parties had to distance themselves. It's the story of quite a few Bahubalis that you've written about. We've seen, the killing that took place quite recently of Atiq Ahmed as well. Most of them, have quite a difficult end, which comes in. Why do you think that is? How do you see all of this play out currently? At this point in time.
Talking about Atiq Ahmed
yes.
or in general?
Yes,
Atiq
both.
Ahmed.
Atiq Ahmed first and then in general.
Well, Atiq Ahmed is dead and gone. So that chapter is over. And what is left of Atiq Ahmed's family is his wife and a couple of sons, I think. The wife is on the run. I do not think that, and most of his properties have been seized, razed to the ground, all of that has happened. I do not think Atiq Ahmed's family will be able to rebuild that notorious empire which Atiq Ahmed had. So that I think the Atiq Ahmed chapter is over and for good. Now overall, what will happen to, and again if you are restricting ourselves to UP, what will happen to the Bahubali phenomenon in UP, that's, we still have a long way to go. There are so many others.
There are more Atiq Ahmeds.
There are more Atiq Ahmeds, they may be less in stature right now, but there are more Atiq Ahmeds, and we have to wait and watch and see whether the enthusiasm of this government is sustained over a period of time, or was it just selective?
I want to come to a larger point, on why do people vote for Bahubalis? We've understood who they are, how they came into being, the nexus between the politicians and them, the symbiotic relationship which was there, and why do they prosper as politicians, or why do people vote for them?
What do people want from their government or from the administration? They want their genuine grievances to be addressed and addressed promptly. Most of the times that does not happen. Now just imagine a common man from a village or from a small town or from even a city. He has no connections. But he has got to get his work done in a government office, maybe the collector's office or maybe some other office. So he goes there and to get his issue resolved. Who listens to him? In a huge government office, unless you have contacts, unless you know people, it's very rare for you to be heard. You may have a land dispute, maybe your neighbor is creating problems for you. So you go to the relevant authorities, you go to the police, you lodge a complaint, nobody listens to you. Then what do? So you go to your next door Bahubali, your friendly neighborhood Bahubali, and tell him, Hujur, this has to be done. I am being terrified. Now, a Bahubali loves when people come with these complaints. One, because it gives him a chance to resolve and show to the world that he is close to the common man. And two, to reiterate that you need me to get your work done. And I am even bigger than these guys from whom you want to get work done, because when you come to me, you believe that I can get the work done from these guys. I'm not the collector, but I will make sure that the collector does your work. So they love this. And when the work of the common man is done, then why would not the common man vote for the Bahubali? He will say, "Theek hai, it's all right. He must have murdered a few people, he must have terrified some people, he must have created problems. But my work was done. The collector ought to have done my work. The administrative department officer ought to have done my work. The police should have done my work. None of them did it. This man has done it. Why should I not vote for him?" So that's how.
So you are attributing it largely to a failure of the system when it's not working on time, justice delayed, is denied.
Absolutely. When the system fails, the Bahubalis flourish. Now, if the system were to work correctly, were to be empathetic, were to be prompt, how would the Bahubalis flourish? At least in terms of handling public grievances and becoming popular and winning elections. See, it's one thing for Bahubalis to make money, even as a politician or as a businessman, but to win elections, the fear factor cannot be the only factor by which votes can be got. It has to be something more than that, which means the public must feel that you have done their work. And so therefore, if the politicians or even the administration takes care of your grievances, the Bahubalis would have no role to play, and they would not be that popular.
You're saying that they almost saw themselves as social activists, you know, required and doing social good. The Robin Hood image that you're talking about. Was there do you think there was an era when this used to happen, or do you think this is something politically we are going to be able to resolve at some point in time in India?
The Bahubali phenomenon?
Yes.
The Bahubali phenomenon, I don't think, can ever be resolved. It can be contained. Because you will always have at some place or the other some muscle man, having a leverage in a political party or outside the political party, but still a leverage for himself. So that cannot be altogether resolved. But what is possible is to bring down the levels of criminal elements into politics. That is a possibility.
Rajesh Singh, thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.